Imagine your great-grandfather refreshing a telegram like we refresh Reddit, for example. A world where going viral meant printing 10,000 broadsheets by moonlight. What would change, and what single twist would make the whole thing behave like our internet? Stay with me. I'm going to show you the one 19th century pivot that would have rewritten history. Today, we'll build a Victorian internet in 5 steps. The tech they already had, the institutions it would plug into, the cultural shockwaves, the obstacles that would slow it, and the single tweak that would flip the switch. The telegraph, electricity carrying dots and dashes down a wire, was already a global network within decades of its invention. Samuel Morse demonstrated a long-distance telegraph in 1844. Within 30 years, cables and wires stitched continents together. By the 1860s, engineers had even laid submarine cables across the Atlantic. The technical leap from a line-by-line telegraph to a worldwide message grid was real, and it happened fast. Newspapers were exploding in circulation in the early 1800s. Faster printing plus more readers meant huge appetite for news. Telegraphs fed those presses with near real-time updates. And on paper, literally, the idea of a programmable calculating machine existed. Charles Babbage sketched the analytical engine in the 1830s, and Ada Lovelace imagined programs for it. The raw concepts of computation and networked messaging were within the Victorian imagination. Now, translate modern internet services into 19th century equivalents. Social media would be telegraph plus newspapers. Operators and print editors become moderators. Public threads appear as serialized telegrams printed as broadsheets. Search would comprise of index card catalogs and newspaper digests. If you wanted answers, trained clerks would query machines and file cabinets. Streaming, not quite. Bandwidth was expensive. Telegrams were paid per word, so messages would be compressed, terse, and sensational. Think headlines as the currency of attention. Business would change overnight. Stock quotes transmitted by telegraph already did for the 19th century markets. Speed meant money. The Victorian internet would be fast, costly, centralized, and brutally concise. But there were real limits. Telegraph messages were slow by today's standards, expensive, charged per word, and required trained operators. The analytical engine remained largely unbuilt. Mechanical computing struggled with tolerances and funding. Wires and cables are fragile. Authorities and private companies controlled the lines. In short, the bones were there, but vital organs were incomplete. Put simply, you could have the pipes, but you didn't yet have cheap processors, packet switching, or mass-produced endpoints, the equivalents of our phones and PCs. There's one historically plausible tweak, a single change in funding, timing, or invention that would let Victorians build something functionally like the internet. It's not magic. It's mechanical, political, and wholly 19th century. Want to know what it is? Imagine this chain of events. Massive government-backed investment in Babbage's Analytical Engine around the 1840s. Not a few prototype parts, but full manufacturing at scale, driven by national interests, navy, census, rail scheduling. If Parliament or a coalition of industrialists had funded and manufactured robust mechanical computers, you suddenly have programmable machines capable of routing, tabulating, and storing structured data. Teleprinters, printing telegraph machines, and mechanical human switching exchanges were already in development. With machine controllers like the analytical engines, you could automate routing and multiplexing, sending many messages over one wire, effectively creating a packet-like system using relays and punched card buffers. If telegram prices dropped via public subsidy or competition, more people and institutions would use the network for small communications, not just urgent official dispatches. Put those 3 together and you get an automated stored message network. Messages are encoded, switched, printed or stored, and forwarded. In short, a proto-internet. This is not modern electronics, but it is functionally similar. Addressing, routing, and distributed storage. Enough to let newspapers, markets, and social networks burst into life at Victorian speed. If the Victorian Internet had arrived, here's what changes first. News cycles accelerate, serialized fiction and op-eds flood the system, mass literacy and sensationalism spike, markets synchronize internationally, booms and panics move faster, and financial regulation is forced into being earlier. Diplomacy is live, wars and treaties played out in public telegram feeds, censorship battles ignite, science and engineering accelerate. With computational machines available, data processing for railways, weather, and mapping grows faster. And then, something we don't usually see in historical telegraph accounts, a culture of real-time public argument, the ancestor of comment sections, trolls, and hashtag campaigns, but in waistcoats and top hats. So what was the single tweak? Scale the analytical engine. If Babbage's idea had been built at industrial scale and wired into the already sprawling telegraph network, the Victorians could have built a mechanical internet scaffold with teleprinters as terminals, telegraph cables as the backbone, and printing presses to amplify content. Babbage plus telegraph plus cheap access equals Victorian Internet. That one change, funding and manufacturing the engine, would likely not have given us apps and social platforms as we know them. But it would have given a functioning distributed information network with all its wonders and turbulences decades earlier. Which Victorian invention would you want in our timeline? The telegraph, Babbage's machine, or something else? Drop it in the comments. If you like this speculative diving, hit like, subscribe, and I'll make a follow-up.